Ladies and gentlemen, Pronago bringing you some more Cos Monarchy casting, and specifically, more Gauntlet Stage A tournament casting qualifying to the main stage, which is going to be taking place on the 20th and 21st of this month, June. So let's see what's coming next. We've got the lower bracket ahead of us, and of course that means we are going to be taking a look today at Sosij's Protoss against KutyamCsupan's Terran. On the other side of the bracket we have Goliaths versus I Like to Eat Grass. That means we're going to have some ZVZ tomorrow. But today, Protoss versus Terran. And as a reminder, the loser of these next two matches, the Sosij versus Kutyam one and the Jack versus Grass one, will be facing off in another best of five, last chance to qualify out of this gauntlet stage. The loser will have to sign up for stage B if they want another shot. So, without further ado, let us get into the game. We are going to be looking at some PvT action today. And up first on our docket, in the top left, we have the underdog, the lower seed, KutyamCsupan. He is our Magma Terran. And on the bottom right of Potadia, a BDB map, we have Sosij. He is the white Protoss. And it does look like this Hungary versus Peru matchup is going to be an interesting one. I know that these two have been grinding a lot of matches in general. And Sosij obviously was on the receiving end of a fairly one-sided match score in one of our previous casts. It was a 3-0 exit for Shopkeeper Dog in the upper bracket. But Sosij isn't up against a Sosij. Sosij is up against Terran. And Kutyam has struggled versus Protoss in particular. So let's see what he wants to do with his opener. A Fulcrum is on the way. And of course a Gateway on the other side. This is a fairly standard selection and choice by Terran players these days, is to go Mech as the opening for playing versus Protoss, playing versus Terran as well. I have no idea what they do versus a Sosij, and I'm pretty sure Bio and Mech are kind of interwoven with each other as openers in versus Zerg play. So Bioman is a little bit more rare, you could say. But definitely an interesting set of choices available to the Terran arsenal if they choose to do it. I guess I will just go right out and say, even if this series went to all 5 games, I don't think we would actually see Bio as the opener. Kutyam's stable playstyle is very easy to just sort of assume he's going to go one way. I don't see a lot of variance from him. It looks like he wants to grind out the fundamentals. Maybe later on he can start adding like cheese or non-standard play as compared to his usual, that kind of thing. We have a 3-gate with some Legionnaires coming, so Sosij already at least tipping the scales towards something more aggressive. However, his Legionnaire didn't move out to try to scout, and so the Mason is going to come in here and see all 3 of those gateways. It might have even spotted the Warden warping in. You know, if you don't know what that structure is because you couldn't click on it in time, you could still at the very least surmise based on the positioning and the footprint of the structure that that is indeed a Warden. And we're going to have those lobotomy mines laid here, while the Vultures not actually being too proactive just yet. And it does look like maybe Kutyam's thinking about that. By the way, you will expect, coming into this, I did say Kutyam's the underdog. Sosij is definitely the favorite. We're going to have to see what he wants to do as this series commences. I have a little bit of time here before any action gets rolling, and we don't see any huge economic plays coming. Sosij seemingly implying he wants to stay on one base for a little bit with that Sedent, which is going to increase the gas yield from the ridge. So I'm just going to take this opportunity to say, hey, thanks for checking out Cos Monarchy. We got daily uploads again for the time being, and hopefully for the foreseeable future. We got all kinds of epic tournament stuff coming, and so definitely stay tuned, stay subscribed to the channel if you're not already, and think about, I don't know, maybe throwing us a few bucks if you really like the project. You can do that on the Coffee page, Pronago and Week 7 on coffee.com. And you can also do it paypal.com/ what is it? PayPal.me/TTGames, I think it is. Anyway, the links are all in the description if you want to support financially. I appreciate that very much. Some of these mines are going to be the early warning symbols, warning signs for Kutyam's Vultures. He's going to go ahead and build his ministry. I like it over here, actually, because versus a lot of Legionnaires, you got to expect that they're going to try to do some sort of attack up. And yeah, it's just something to keep in mind. I like that he's now trying to defend the mines, at least punish. There's a good hit. It's going to force some connections to fall away. So the lobotomy mine doesn't do damage like the spider mine does in StarCraft 1, but it does stun units for 3 seconds and then slows them for 3 more afterwards. And if they just blow the mine up, but it's nearby the unit that attacked it, or the unit that was, if it's near any units, hostile or otherwise, it does also just apply the slow effect. And you can manually detonate them by selecting them and hitting a button, so that's pretty cool. This is a 2-Folk expand build with Vultures and Goliaths. Seems like it's going to be pretty steady Goliath production. I do actually remember there's a lot of chatter about the Goliath being a really powerful unit, which is really funny because for a long time people always said it was not very good. And even like when Shopkeeper Dog, for example, is talking about how, and for those who don't know, even though he's playing a Sosij now, he was a top Terran. He was the top Terran for some time, top active Terran, you know, stuff like that. So Ayud had switched to Protoss, and then we had to think about hit him up being random, and so you can call him any one race. But yeah, Shopkeeper Dog was at least like the third best active Terran in his heyday when he was really playing that race. And he said that, like, you know, yeah, I spam out Goliaths sometimes because they're a garbage unit. I put them in the front to tank or something weird like that. So it is amusing to me whenever people are like, this unit is sucks so much. I need so many of them. They make like 40. Anyway, 40 Goliaths does sound pretty menacing. I don't think Kutyam will get up to that level, but he is starting to move out as his ministry lands, so this is kind of an interesting little play here. We have that Ardent Authority coming. A second one has already been started as well. It's almost blocking the gas, but it cancels it? I wonder what Sosij is thinking right now. Does he think that he can't like get units out or something? Not entirely sure. Some scribes that are idle behind the mineral line. Legionnaire gets volleyed down by the Vultures. When your Legionnaires actually teleport, so they debuff the unit that they attack, and then other Legionnaires and the unit that attacked it in the first place can blink towards the target, and that's pretty neat. So we have that ability to sort of short-range teleport near any targets that have been hit by a Legionnaire. And during that time, they do actually dodge projectile attacks like the Vulture, but hit scan attacks like the Goliath, which are instant hit, those are going to always hit the target. So in that way, the Goliath count is, well, it's actually rising pretty heavily. We got one guy back here for anti-drop, I guess. And then what do we have? We have 5 on the front, 4 more on the way. So yeah, he's got 10 Goliaths out, and he did make an 11th. Got a Palladium on the way, 3rd Fulcrum on the way, making another Goliath afterwards. One of the reasons why people were saying Goliaths are really strong is because they only take 22 seconds to build. Of course, they are pretty expensive, so we'll see if Kutyam's money is properly leveraged here. A Cantor on the way. I could see a world where the Vultures dive on the Acantor and the Goliaths just go after everything else, but how do you get access to that particular target? I mean, look at the Legionnaire count. You're not really going to be able to get there, and so Starpad is on the way as well back behind this. This is even before the Acantor was sighted. We do have that secondary Ardent now. We don't have any Embassy, so the drop play isn't actually happening for Sosij. It's something he really does enjoy quite a bit. Starting to saturate the Vespene here in the natural. Got a pretty reasonable economy for both players, slightly ahead for Kutyam, which is probably a consideration because of Sosij's delayed expansion. He did hang out on one base for a little bit longer, but I don't necessarily think he's economically behind in a big way right now. But I will note that it's pretty unusual to see Terran trying to contain the Protoss, and a lot of money was spent on these static defense structures that Kutyam is wisely not engaging into. He's just kind of trading down some of the initial salvos of the Legionnaires and trying to like thin the herd there, force him to replenish his front line, which is now being switched over to Zealots. So there is some math here that like basically says, okay, when Sosij has enough Zealots, he can probably break out. Not that many mines left over. In fact, only 1 mine left over, it seems. Goliaths are starting to be focused down. That's a pretty big stun on a few of the Striders in the back. That's going to break up the army a little bit. But Kutyam just starts to cycle back. I do like that he's not immediately falling back to his entirely way back to the home base, right? I think that's a good move. And interestingly, he's trying to fit in a treasury here. So we select the workers that he's got mining inside the main base. He's got a little under the saturation that you would want for like ideal minimal saturation for the minerals in both bases. But he's definitely doing, he's going to be transferring some workers over to this treasury. It doesn't make workers directly. If there's a quarry add-on somewhere on the map and the treasury can make it as well, you can make Talos at the very least. But interestingly enough, the Goliaths are being forced away. The Vultures are being sacrificed. You've got a couple of phalanx here. Oh, 3 more coming up. Okay, so this should be a pretty big hold. The Goliath count's going to be able to eviscerate the frontline units. Yeah, that's way too many Goliaths indeed. So it looks like economically speaking, Kutyam is starting to get a little bit more value. His Vulture has found the Nexus. Killed the Scribe, but not before the structure was actually put down. Another mine hit connects on those units that are trying to reinforce. And listen, I've been harping on Sosij a little bit here in some of these casts. It has to be said, his Acantors are not usually with his army. Look at how much better those Goliaths are going to be dealt with. Much more handily they will be dealt with, courtesy of that Acantor. Now that one Vulture actually soaked up a lot of those Acantor shots, and the Phalanxes deploy just in time to clear one of them. But you can't stick around for too long with that, and the Goliath count is starting to dwindle. Loss of the frontliners means that all those backliners are going to start being targeted. This is an overextension by Sosij. I mean, think about all the times that in StarCraft 1 PvT, you hear about a Protoss player that really ought to have pulled away their gateway army once their zealots went down. You think about versus, you know, Siege Tank Vulture or whatever. We don't have that embassy for the flyovers, for the drops, and so the Goliath count is essentially just sort of like this mid-range deflector guardian for the Phalanx. And even in tank mode, they're just kind of rocking out here. Threading the needle between all of those Phalanx, that a Acantor projectile does just fly and that goes to max range. So is that all of the Acantors? It feels like we are out of Acantors right now for Sosij. Warping in an Ancestral Archives, it looks like he wants to pivot into the ever-important Uptecton. But what did we say in the Sosij series that he played? He had Uptectons out a few times, but he only really got a lot of mileage out of them when he had the front line that he needed. Kutyam being pretty active with his army. He does have a winning military right now. So that Zealot's down, and this Nexus is going to be forfeit. I don't think Sosij is going to have an easy time breaking out from this position. Kutyam impressing a little bit with his composition, but also with his, I think most importantly, his army movement. He didn't like let Sosij take all the space for free. He deflected the attack. The Acantors weren't with the army. There was no envoy to try to speed them up. And there's some pretty significant moves here. Obviously, I'm not saying there's a perfect game by the Terran by any means, but he's got a well-saturated third base now. He shut down the third for his opponent. No artisans are in play to try to make up the economics, and the Pariah is out here trying to fight, but not working out the way that he would want. Anciel's flying over. Unfortunate to say they don't get any damage dealt to them by all of the Matrixes. And the shield's absorbing quite a bit. Second Pariah is deployed. We got more Acantors coming now, finally. The embassy was made. No witness just yet for our Protoss, and no envoy to actually scoop up those Acantors. Shuttle Reaver equivalent, basically, is envoy Acantor. And with the Phalanx here to finally start shellacking these static defense structures. Not going to see too much here. The Matrix is more of a defensive move. Not super effective at actually dealing damage, and yet the amount of mech here is way too much. Sosij loses both Pariahs. He does not have his Uptecton out yet. He just started it. This is all hitting like a minute too early for the Protoss to have a proper defense, and even if they had the Uptecton out, I don't think it would be enough. I think this managed Goliath tank, you just walk up to the Uptecton and finish it off. Anciel even coming over here to absorb a few shots, and Sosij concedes with no GG. Can't believe he just got Goliath tanked. Well, we have plenty more games to go, but that's starting off very nicely for a Terran upset. It's really hard to upset in a best of 5. You do have to win 3 matches as a player who is maybe not as good as your opponent. So keep that in mind as we go into our second map, which I would love to just go ahead and tell you guys what it is ahead of time, but unfortunately I didn't have the folder open properly. Okay, it's Macroglia coming up at you, another Biddy map. And we have arrived onto Macroglia for Game 2. Kutyam, the Magma Terran who completed his upset victory, is in the top right. Dio was kind to him. Will Macroglia be the same? Sosij in the bottom left is our white Protoss, and he's definitely going to be looking for a bit of a different style. Maybe one that doesn't have the Legionnaire opener, unless he has some different way to play it that will be a bit more pressureful against the 2-Folk Vault opener. I think if you're doing like 1-Folk Expand, Gateway Legionnaire start is probably pretty good. Maybe Kutyam was even doing something like that, but all of the games I've seen him play have typically been, a 2-Folk start, and looks like we're going to be kicking things off with that Fulcrum versus Gateway matchup yet again, so no surprises there. But just keep that in mind. Kutyam did a fairly stable build order where he got a lot of Vultures in the early game. He was able to deflect any early pressure from the Legionnaire start and expand ahead of his opponent. His opponent also kind of doubled down on the single base aggression by going for the Sedent, which is it's like about half the resources you would need for a Nexus. So it's not a trivial expenditure in the early stages of the game. It does put you back down a little bit. And so, yeah, I guess the counter to that point is that you have workers that would be harvesting gas that can't anymore from the ridge because it's being capped. So now it's time to go and mine minerals instead. I don't know. Something like that could be the case. I already talked a little bit recently about how people have always said, for some time now, I guess, maybe not always, but when we remade the mechanics so that you could harvest from naked geysers, And of course, that included the ridge. One of the things that they were talking about is how it would be really nice if you could still harvest while capping. You could still mine from the node while you're putting a cap on it. And my only sort of consternation about that is that there is actually a decision to be made. So if I was going to allow any harvesting, it would probably be like reduced rate harvesting during the build time of the cap, and maybe then also the build times would increase or something like that, right? So, you know, it's just a thought. If I was going to change the mechanic, that might be how it is, but we don't need to change mechanics all the time. We can just say, no, this is how it is, and people can be all right with it, and they can be like, no, but my live service game, and that's okay. That's all right. It is a 3-gate with Dracodon-focused production so far. Probably won't be seeing the seeded then. I don't think he's actually going to be able to bank the money. He'd have to idle his gateways for some time before his expansion even, let alone any gas cap. Vultures are moving down the map. As a reminder, by the way, this is, of course, the finalized map pool for Acropolis. Macroglia has made it in, as Patadia did as well. One of the things that I did do, just for historicity, is I went back and looked at the map pool from Acropolis 3. And Patadia was made around the time of Acropolis 2, but it came out just a hair too late for me to properly get it vetted and tested. And it also did see some adjustments afterwards that I think have made it a better map. And so I'm happy to feature it in this version, this Acropolis, this round, this rotation. But just pointing that out because it's pretty neat to finally see it in. But if anybody's like, wow, Patadia is a really old map, didn't it exist in last Acropolis? Like, yes, it was made around that time, but it definitely has not seen its time in the sun as a proper Acropolis map. It's been in Weekend Wages, it's been in, of course, the first half of the Tribunal stage for qualifying into Acropolis 4, but it has not been anywhere near a main Acropolis stage, not recently, so I just wanted to throw that out there. We do have some lobotomy mines being laid. They are actually going to be here to disrupt mining, I suppose, once the Nexus does get put down. Not coming just yet here for our Protoss, however, and it does look like that Ministry build with Goliaths is going to be, once again, what Kutyam does. So, a very stable build, as mentioned, that is Kutyam style. He's going to get a little bit of map control with the Vultures. This feels like Sosij is just doing a 3-gate walkout. He puts his Warden down, and he's going to start muscling out of this position, and maybe seeing if he can just walk across the map and kill the Terran player for doing a 2-Fulk Vulture Goliath build. You know, you don't have like a fast Palladium for any Phalanx. It's a pretty deadly build, even if you do have the Phalanx, I think. Definitely going to need to save all of the units that he can, and he does indeed withdraw. Hopefully he can maybe slow the approach of his opponent. We don't have any mines left on those Vultures. This one has 2, so you're definitely going to need to lay those over here at the choke point. And he's got a couple of Goliaths. He's making 2 more. Maybe there's a shot for him to be able to hold this. It really does come down to the micro-execution, I think, because Sosij does have a good amount of Dracodons. It's 15 damage, -3 armor, so 12 damage each. 240 health is nothing to snot at, to blow your nose at. In fact, let's do some quick maths here. That's going to take 20 shots to kill a Goliath, and he only has 7 Dracodons. So this amount of Goliaths is probably a little bit too much for Sosij to deal with. He does have a Hierophant to try to speed things up, but those first offerings, even though he clears all the Vultures, yeah, at this point he's done. He's gonna. Oh no, he's getting right in their face. That's not what you need to do. You need to be kiting near max range. Instead, he's just trying to focus them down. But look at how long it takes them to actually get cleared. This Dracodon army will not be able to break all of these Goliaths. They're outperforming what I thought they would do when they weren't kiting at all, and the full DPS of the Goliath was actually being leveraged. But still, regardless of that, it is not a winning proposition. And he did cut some military so that he could afford his Nexus. So Sosij is going to miss a little bit of a rotation here on the military. The Goliaths are going to saunter forward. This could be an overextension from Kutyam, though. Remember, he's not going to be right next to his reinforcement point as his 3rd Fulcrum comes down. It's a bit of a different game state than Patadia. The attack was certainly more effective, but yeah, well. Ooh, very close to losing both Dracodons. He might as well have lost that one. I suppose it can be put towards the back. Mines have hit the workers. A second lobotomy mine has hit the scribes. Wild stuff. Looks like we got those harvesters over in the natural, taking care of business there. Yeah, I don't know. The Goliath count is obviously going to still rise. It is just sort of a spam out single unit right now. You get an inflection point where if you have enough Dracodons and you're at somewhat max range against the Goliaths, you should be in the clear. Now I mute for the cop sirens. Well, I thought that was actually going to be much louder, so that was unnecessary, but at least I typed an ASMR message. I guess it was an ASMR because I was muted, so you couldn't hear my keyboard. There you go. Treasury starting up pretty fast. Attempt to pivot into a third base. Maybe even a little bit ahead of schedule compared to Patadia. Hard to say right now. The Palladium is starting, so only 2 Fulcrums are available for producing units, and only one of them is actually churning out a Goliath now. Kutyam corrects that. And he ends up losing his Zealot and Dracodon and being pushed away, so Sosij is gonna need to think about what he wants to do next. Going for double Grand Library. Is he gonna try to trade with Atreus's? That is a possibility. If he wants to just go for Atreus, they can kind of chip away at the Goliaths a little bit better. Could also be looking for Storm. If you have like a decent number of Zealots, and I actually don't mind the idea of going for Ecclesias, but once the Phalanx comes out, that's not going to be super useful. But if you can get units to deal with these Goliaths and start like annoying them to some degree, Storm would actually be really good. Obviously, Zealots would be being hit by the Storm as well, but no, it's Atreus. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense anyway. I wonder if weirdly enough, if it would be good to have like a Manifold or a Barghest, addition to this army, but I don't know how you would access that tech in a way that would give you something useful otherwise. Maybe Charlatan from the Rogue Gallery just to give yourself, that extra bit of damage to overwhelm the Goliath health. Treasury comes out. We immediately have, okay starting saturation here. Again, taking a look at the Masons here, it is, he's a little bit under strength in the minerals of the main base. The natural has only one guy on the ridge, but an extra Fulcrum, and he's obviously got gas mining from the geyser inside the third base. So this is looking pretty solid here for Kutyam. He's definitely mathed this build out and drilled it enough times that he knows what he's doing. And I think this is a really good demonstration of, if you just have a plan and you want to stick to that plan, go ahead, man. Go ahead and do that. Also, I hate to point out, but Protoss players have a hard time with their SimCity. And he made a pylon, which is supposed to be something that I give thumbs up to, but then he put his Grand Libraries in such a way that they're going to be pretty far away from that Crucible. I don't know if the top one, or even the top right one, is going to be enchanted by it. It might be. It might be. But also, you can take an Envoy and just scoop this pylon up. You can reposition it. Instead, it's going to be the 3 Dracodon drop. He's doing the 3. Anseal on intercept course for that. But it doesn't look like they're going to pass by each other. Yeah, it's going to be just out of the idea. Anseal there for his scouting. The Witness is coming out to do the same thing for the Protoss. And you can see the Phalanx is starting to deploy in the back line. This is where you need an overabundance of Zealots to see if you can try to spread out some of that splash damage there, use the Phalanxes against themselves. And Sosij wisely backs up as his front line evaporates. The drop is going to commence now. That orange dot moving to the main base is not a threat, it's just for scouting, so the NCL isn't going to be particularly useful. And falling away from the sieges, this is perfect play. So, at least in perfect strategy for Sosij. His micro is whatever, but the just considering it from the perspective of, I need to make sure I'm falling away from the Phalanxes as they deploy, particularly when my front line starts to evaporate. His Amaranths are not here with the fight, so this is a big miss. His Striders are all clumped up, but at least the Atreus's are there, and the workers are starting to get chipped away at by those Dracodons. Now the Sirens come out, and so too do some more of the Striders to chip away at the Goliaths in front. There are some more in the back, but Kutyam's micro, his multitasking is being tested. Here comes some Amaranths. They're getting right on top of the Phalanx. Yeah, it's still very, very expensive here for the Protoss player to try to break out, but he's getting some Zealots. Feels like if he had kept his Strider count alive for that long, he would have been in a better spot. Envoy gets killed. It doesn't look like the Dracodons were in it. They died in the natural anyway. Worker count has been caught up on, but remember that the even though the Nexus is warping in down here at the 6 o'clock, it's a nice cheeky little spot, but yeah, Sosij, he's now down 0-2 in the start here. No GG coming out from him either. Kutyam is 1 win away from not just completing the upset, but doing it in pretty dominant fashion. Something has got to change, and I think he was closer to it here in Macroglia, but yeah, Sosij is definitely in an awkward spot. But we go to a 3-spawn map for our next round. It's Frozen Sylphid coming up next, and if Sosij can go beyond that, we get to a 4-spawn map, Quasar Quartet. So I'm hoping against hope that Sosij is able to find the answers and give us a nice, entertaining set. Let's see what happens in Game 3. Game 3 on a 3-spawn map, and at 3 o'clock we have Kutyam. Actually, this is like 4 o'clock, but whatever. Almost as epic as it could have been. If it was Knife's Edge, it would have been a bit of a different story. Knife's Edge is available for this rotation, by the way, but it was not selected by either of these players. And Sosij is going for a lattice start, a 6 lattice, no less. So this is definitely something more on the aggressive side, and he's scouting after it. This is real deal stuff. I mean, if you think about what's going to screw up the build order for Kutyam, getting an early Vassal, forcing out faster either Watchdog, which he never had to make, or Goliath, which he doesn't want to make until the Vultures come out, it could potentially give Sosij more play in the set. I like that he's already adapting. Of course, our color guesses are not really guesses here. This is white Protoss for Sosij, and Magma Terran of Kutyam. And we even got some typing about what's hard to focus fire. I think Sosij just needed to kite from distance there. That was probably the way to dismantle that from a micro-mechanical standpoint. But yeah, it's definitely something that you got to think about. The DPS calcs is a little bit weird for the Goliath. The game tries to give you an estimate of it, but it needs some hand-holding in places where maybe I didn't always add like the manual override for the attack cooldown, for example. The problem is that the Goliath says it has that much DPS, but it has a targeting delay. So you got to think about it from that perspective too. Simulacrum moving across the map, and it looks like, oh, he's sim rushing. Okay, this actually makes a little bit more sense. Sim moving across, Vassal afterwards. So I guess the Vulture is going to try to like not split the sim if he can. And Kutyam's micro isn't always a spectacular display, right? Like he's winning off of this execution of like a stable strategy that just gives him a smothering force that can move across the map at a steady time. But the Vulture's already split the sim, and at that point you kind of need to focus down the fire. You can't just like pull back. You've already split it once. And now there's two sims here. I think this is already starting to become a problem. He goes ahead and triggers the first lobotomy mine, gets right on top of another Vulture, and, well, he needs to focus down one target. Oh, he tries to stun the Vulture. That's maybe a little bit of a counter fluff from Sosij. He needs to start running that sim away so that he gets a split off, but it's not quite going to happen. Does end up just getting dealt with. The Watchdog coming out. Okay, so him triggering the lobotomy mine with that is not ideal, and he didn't even focus fire the Mason. Oh, man, this is such a mess. Almost ends up losing both Vassals as well. I mean, think about the worker count here. It's about even. Grand Library follow-up. Dracodon coming out of the gateway. He's got one sim at home for defense and one Vassal that'll be flying over. I forced out an early Goliath. Back to Vulture production for now. At the very least, he put Kutyam on notice. He said, hey, I might do some crazy rush stuff. So maybe that'll affect the build order in the opening if Sosij gets after this game. But that is not looking good. I mean, this is a bit of a hellish start. I really feel like the first mistake Kutyam made to split the first sim and back away, that was already cataclysmic. And then somehow that, the lobotomy mine detonation from that sim, he didn't like micro it backwards as soon as the lobotomy mine unburrowed and targeted the sim. And that would have stunned the first Vulture and let him like focus down the other one or whatever. He also kept changing targets between the two Vultures. That wasn't good. But at the very least, it does look like Kutyam is a little bit hungry for the end of the set. And he is going to get a little bit of value from that, it looks like. By killing a sim and a manifold, only losing one Vulture and laying a couple of mines to cover the retreat. Ministry on location, doesn't need to worry about lifting and landing it. There's no ramp here either. That was a key detail for Macroglia and Patadia, that Sosij couldn't really go up into the main base. And the natural was just floated over, so a little bit different now, a little bit of a distinction. But is it a distinction with a difference? At least as far as the set is concerned. This could end here. Second Grand Library, we are switching into pretty heavy Atreus tech, and we even have the manifolds. I was talking about maybe that's a possibility. That would be pretty good. Because, say you have enough manifolds to boost the armor over the 3 armor of the Goliath, then, you're talking about 16 shots instead of 20 to kill the Goliath, so there is that. Yes, I do have a calculator app open, just in case I need it. 16 Dracodon shots to kill a Goliath. The Atreus has no armor pen either, but it does deal 20 damage. So, 240 divided by 17 gives you, you need 15 shots to kill the Goliath. But if you have the armor pen, then obviously 240 divided by 20 is 12, by the way. So much easier to chip away at them with Atreus, particularly if you got that armor pen boost from having active manifolds. The manifolds have to be attacking. As long as they're attacking, they give the armor pen bonus. So they can attack their own unit. You can bring some tanky boy and just shoot it with the manifolds. In fact, I'm pretty sure that it might have been Shopkeeper Dog who came up with this at first. I can't remember because he plays a bunch of the races. I think he only really doesn't play Zerg, but he does play, Terran, Protoss, and Sosij now. I'm not sure if he'll play Blood Summon. Maybe he will. In fact, comment below if you think you'll play Blood Summon, based on what you know about them. And if you don't know anything about them other than the fact that they're the 5th race of Cosmonarchy, then still, just based on the name alone, let me know. Pretty solid move out here from our Protoss player, and the Vultures do end up spying it out. But look at the Goliath count. We got 9 Goliaths and 2 more being made. Yeah, Kutyam is definitely having some fun with the Goliath monocomp. But with the Vassal going down, that's going to speed up a couple of units, maybe a little bit less than what we would want to see. And no front line here at all. There was only the one Zealot. Is this a catch that Kutyam needs to just finish this series here and now? The Focus Fire is trying to come in. The Atreus's do have that behavior where their projectile gets intercepted. He's trying to right-click the Manifolds, which is an interesting choice. Single Amaranth has arrived. Is he going to go with all of this army? No, it looks like he's just going to withdraw. He's just going to fall back, get his Nexus up. He is behind economically by a considerable margin. He did go 6 Lattice, and it didn't get him particularly ahead. In fact, it looks like he was just default behind. But he's making a bunch of extra Amaranths. He feels like it, his Strider count didn't... I don't think he lost a Drakodin or anything. I could have missed it, but I believe his Strider count has held steady, and now the unit production is going to be slowed a little bit. We got multiple Fulcrums not quite finished, and we have that Palladium coming up, so only 1 Goliath being reinforced right now. If he's able to catch the Goliath count, we could see a serious turnover of the odds. Kutyam could end up being in a position where he was maybe a little bit too greedy. But in the other 2 games, he made a Palladium after having 2 Fulcrums otherwise available to produce units. And now he's got to deal with, fighting on multiple fronts. This is where you're going to see the Goliath struggle a lot more, I think. He can't really, right-click a particular target. He's trying to deal with those Amaranths. They do have shield steal, so when they attack, they actually get some shields back. And look at that. Wow, crushing through the Manifold count incredibly high. So even if he picks off 2 Manifolds, he still has enough to ignore all the armor of the Goliath, and that is going to eliminate all of them. The worker who's pulled, the Cestus, is trying to come out. We do have Phalanxes being made. This will be a desperate worker pull where already Sosij has secured a worker lead. Now they try to evacuate. I don't think it's going to quite matter. 4 Goliaths being made now to try and defend. A lobotomy mine from the beginning of the game stuns that Goliath. Doesn't quite stop Sosij from just walking in and focusing down these Phalanx. And when you're on top of the Terran production, there's almost no hope here for the Terran to do much of anything. And the Sims are starting to split. The Masons are dead. GG is called, and Kutyam concedes his first match in the series. Sosij on the board, and it was a fairly quick sub-8 minute victory here for him indeed. So, okay. He's found a way, and that was with an economic deficit, by the way. There were some things that, Kutyam did that were maybe a little bit on the greedier side, maybe a little bit on the weaker side in that respect. But that is a very big difference from how games 1 and 2 even played out, even where Kutyam was allowed to stick to his game plan. Maybe all Sosij needs to do is throw his opponent off and make sure he's got a good army into Goliaths. But monocomping rarely works in Cosmonarchy, and I think we saw a little bit of why. Let's get into Game 4. As I mentioned, it's Quasar Quartet, another multi-spawn map instead of 2-spawn. It's a 4-spawn. Maybe that will also play into Sosij's favor. I'm excited. Game 4. Let's go. Here we go, lads and lasses. Sosij in the bottom left is our white Protoss. KutyamCsupan in the top right is our Magma Terran. Cross spawns on Quasar Quartet. Oh man, this could go so many different ways. And it is not lost on me that map 4 of our best of 5 is a 4-spawn map. We don't have any 5-spawn 1v1 maps. Maybe we should make some, just in case, But we definitely can't have 1-spawn 1v1 maps. 1-spawn 1v1 sounds like Worker Rush Simulator or whatever. I don't know. It's pretty goofy. But yeah, not doing that. Not having that. Quasar Quartet, interesting 4-spawn map. We didn't see too much of it in the past. Did have a pretty cool match between Bonoth and DeWalt that unfortunately ended up having a desync that was on this particular map. It was really cool to see the PvP gods duking it out in Cosmonarchy. But we ended up having to call that one after a technical issue, as opposed to having it resolved normally. By the way, we are definitely nearing, at the very least, improvement, if not utter absolution, for the desync issue. In case you've been following the project and you're like, oh, they have desyncs, well, at least there's some cool stuff to look at, but I ain't playing that, or, you already tried playing it and it was too frustrating. Totally get it, totally understand, but we are working on that, and on the 13th of June, or maybe a little bit before that, whenever the games finish up here for this next Gauntlet Stage B. Once we're done with our qualifiers there, we will be ready to start testing some of those desync issues being resolved. So I'm looking forward to that. Fulcrum on the low ground, going for Cyclops and a Ministry afterwards to try to wall it. Has Kutyam done this on purpose? Like, has he actually mathed out like a build a wall for that spawn. Because remember, this is StarCraft 1's engine, right? So your walls are going to be a little bit different depending on your spawn, and sometimes you might not even have a wall depending on... It's just not something that has been stressed in the map-making side of it yet to make sure that we have walls everywhere. But pretty interesting that he's going for the Ministry. Okay, he's going to build an anchor. So this is a very different opener for Kutyam. Worth noting that it was Gateway Lattice, or Lattice first, I suppose. So Lattice into Gateway. The Vassal is out on the map. Did it end up... Yeah, killed the Mason. So that's been made aware. That's why we have the Watchdog preemptively coming up there inside the main base. You know what, Sosij? I think it's time. I think you do your 3 Draken and drop again, but maybe even a lot earlier than before, or just in conjunction with some sort of heckling of the wall, because this is some sort of more greedy opener, it looks like, from Kutyam. He obviously doing 1 Falk expand with an anchor to try to defend, and into Goliath afterwards. I don't know. I feel like this is the thing where you break out your drops. You see what you can do there, because he's only done the drop once so far. It was on that Kroglia, and it did give him a shred of a chance there in that particular map. Making Masons without even lifting the Ministry. He wants it as part of the wall first until he's more reinforced, I guess. That's pretty funny. You know what would be really interesting? Yeah, hear me out. Ministry in the wall, anchor, and then you build a treasury and just waypoint the workers there so you keep your wall intact. I don't know, something about that's really funny. Now, this could be a problem. Sims were not maybe on the menu here in Kutyam's head, because you can just walk in here and then... Well, Sosij is doing it a little bit awkwardly here on the micro. But yeah, you kind of have to just abandon you have to abandon the anchor strat, because the Sims are just going to keep multiplying. Now they're very slowly heckling the Fulcrum. If Manifolds come up, that's going to add some armor pen, remember. In fact, he does have 1 coming. Oh, he's just going to take those free Sims. Every time the Sim takes hull damage from an enemy, it takes 5 seconds, and then it clones itself. And that includes the health that it has at the time, including status effects as well if it was like... lit on fire from a Huracan or something like that by the Terran army. So the Sim cloud is definitely growing, but also this is splash damage, and they will start to really feel the effects of that. Maybe this is where you really do need that Envoy. You just scoop up like 10 of those Sims and throw them upstairs into the main base. Now he's going to step forward and see if he can't just overwhelm individual targets. The Goliath goes down. The Vassal goes down as well, speeding things up. The Hierophant, allowing for that attack speed increase, is going to pop both Goliaths, but, there was some cost there. He did end up losing some units after all. The Manifold, the Vassal, a bunch of Sims, but I don't know. Most of those Sims were free, so I can't really say it was too cost inefficient. And remember, this whole time, Kutyam actually has not been able to build anything over here, harvest anything over here from the natural. He's pulled a bunch of Masons off and kept them on repair for the anchor. And now you might just decide to walk past it. Hold on. This is looking pretty good so far for our Protoss. He busts the anchor, goes after the Cyclops next. The Sims are continuing to split. Now finally we got some lobotomy mines, but they get picked apart as well. I don't know. Okay, one of them did get deployed, but it's pretty far away. And I mean, even though he's got a worker lead, he doesn't actually have any units. 1 Goliath out, the Phalanx halfway complete. Best he can hope for is Sosij kind of takes his eye off the ball here, but he's waypointing more units across. An idol, not really super useful, again, unless there's like a big vulture switch, maybe help chew through the Masons, which, the Masonry will help, because you think about the Atreus, and it's like, yeah, my shot can't get to the damage dealers, but he's got more Drakenons coming for the direct shot. He's got Manifolds, he's got other units, he's got his own Nexus, make more workers, and now the Ministry has to lift. Sosij with a slight worker lead, definitely a more heavy mining lead, and this Goliath was out in the middle of no man's land, no anchor, no lodestone being made for the defense. The Atreus might end up getting popped here. The Draconin does, half HP on that Ministry. Maybe he's held on the 1 base for now, but Sosij has secured a lead. Let's make no bones about it. Maybe still a playable position for Kutyam. He can land the Ministry and indeed make workers out of multiple queues again, but he's going to have a deficit for some time. A Herald has arrived. Pretty good engage unit, pretty good method for descending upon an enemy force with a lot of your own army, basically any unit around it. So I said earlier, like the Vassal dies, that speeds the units up. The same thing happens when an Ecclesiasts die. But when a Herald is present, any unit near it will do that for you. So it gives you that engage tool when you sacrifice 1 life, even if it's a robotic unit like a Sim or something. So pretty effective in that particular case. Trading out a Sim for a Goliath. But the Phalanx is putting out good damage. The Sims are actually over here, which is really funny. They could have maybe like infiltrated the mineral line and let the Phalanxes do some splash damage. That would have been Pretty sick move, but not something that Sosij had the wherewithal to do in that moment. Probably didn't even notice they were waypointing all around. Now taking the third base here. Pretty interesting architecture for this map, you know, being able to engage down here in the third, but not a lot of buildable space. That's pretty neat. These crevices are unbuildable, these like black lines and stuff, so can't build there. Can't build on some of these doodads. So, yeah, pretty neat. But I don't know that we're gonna... This doesn't look like a game that necessarily could go super late. I could be wrong about that. I've been wrong about that kind of thing in the past, but this does look like more like how I expected the set to go, to be honest with you. Sosij just containing him, breaking his wall. A nifty idea that doesn't end up working well versus Sims in particular. So a nice build order matchup there in favor of the Protoss. Phalanx is looking for a position to deploy, and then the Goliaths will have to be the linebackers as more and more Phalanxes are being made. In theory, this is good, but remember what I said about the Herald and how you can just engage on top of it? Also, a Vassal is offered up to the gods, but if there were air units here, that does obviously signify that, like, hey, the Goliath count might need to be focused on a little bit more. Yes, you heard it here first. 4 games deep in a set where Kutyam's basically only made Goliaths for a lot of the game. I'm telling him he might need to make more Goliaths. And he is. He's making 2 more. Very nice. So, a little bit low on the money, obviously. Hasn't been able to keep throughput on all of his production. But now he's mining from his second base. He did rebuild his worker count up a little bit. He's got, what is this? Yeah, 16 mining. Little over your minimum saturation, but it's not a problem to go a little bit over, when you, especially when you have no prospects for a third base anytime soon. And that third is already starting to pay out some Vespene for Sosij as he adds unitary unions to his natural. No Crucible yet to empower the production, but he might not need it right now. And let's see, those Phalanxes are shellacking the front line. Again, when units die around the Herald, they're going to speed things up, so they end up getting out of dodge. He trades down some of those Zealots and Amaranths in favor of clearing a few Goliaths, getting some good splash damage done. Kutyam hasn't really done repairs besides the anchor in really the entire set that I can remember, but definitely not in this game. And so I don't predict he will start repairing up these Goliaths, but he might consider it. It's a lot cheaper than producing a new one, and when your throughput is so low because you only have the 3 active Folk, he's making a 4th one now, but this could be a problem. I think the bigger problem is Architects. Yeah, they are on the way. I think Architect or Unar, Architect is maybe a little bit easier to wield in this particular situation, but you're just going to be bombarding those Goliaths from a long range, and then when there's no Goliaths to protect the Phalanx, it's pretty easy to just walk up on them with the Herald procs for the speed. This Amaranth could be better positioned. Might even catch the Mason anyway, as it looks like he was on a scouting mission and not an expansion mission, but Sosij should be aware that there's a Mason loose on the map at the very least. This is something that has proven annoying for some players, especially if they're playing from, you know, other RTS backgrounds, or they just don't like the idea that you have to like manually micro your unit to melee another unit. You know, personally, I think this is a neat little aspect of the game's skill expression. It's something that exists in StarCraft 1 as well. We probably could make it not work like this, but I think it's fine. It's a fine characteristic. I'm not particularly upset by it. But that, you know, I have a different look at jank. I have a different look at things that most people would consider like bad game design or bad mechanics or whatever. I feel differently about it than a lot of people do, and so I'm just gonna I'm willing to just say, all right, that's a me idea. But I am also making the game, so eat it, nerds. Amaranths trying their best to run interference for those Phalanxes, and he does end up popping 2 of them, but the Goliath count is still pretty reasonable, so he can divest himself of any need to immediately attack. You know, hemorrhaging some of these units off to the side is going to be a problem for the Terran, because the Protoss has so much more military production right now. This is something that we actually see in StarCraft 1 as well, when you get like 5 or 6 fact timing pushes or what have you. Usually the Protoss still ends up with like 9 gates or something, so they can make more units than you can, and you got to keep that in mind. So big stack of a bunch of sort of mixed units, but a lot of it is going to be the necessary artillery. You think about the Architect count. Only at 2 right now. 1 Amaranth blocking the Treasury from landing. The Goliath is going to go ahead and heckle it. This is actually a signal for Sosij to move forward. The Terran army moving. Oh! He still doesn't even know where his opponent is. That's right. The Vassal actually cleared the Mason. That's why the Mason went to the top left to look. Never got a chance to look into the bottom right. He gets there, goes home empty-handed, because that's not where the Protoss base is. It is cross positions, and it took him almost 12 minutes, by the way, to figure that out. Now his army is jaunting over towards this natural or this third base. Maybe he could shut down the 4th, or maybe he's just going to go for a flank and try to crunch the Protoss army. He has a decent number of Phalanxes, but he needs some of these in tank mode just to absorb some of the pressure, because there is no way for him to stop all of these Protoss units from hitting him where it hurts. 3 more Architects on the way. They're slowing down the reinforcements, and this is going to allow the Protoss to either crush the army or move in and for the kill. And honestly, maybe both, because Amaranths do not die to unsieged Phalanx, and they certainly don't die to siege Phalanx when they're right on top of them. So yeah, the Terran army trying to dipset the Wraith, coming in as a scouting unit because the Ancient apparently wasn't quite good enough, and down goes the Herald, so no more free speed procs, but these Amaranths are still killing Phalanx. This is not working out the way that Kutyam wanted it to. Everything is in disarray. He is going to deploy his Phalanx on the low ground, try to splatter those Striders, but 4 Architects are still beaming him down. 3 more from the high ground as well. I think this army's going to get wiped, and he just finally took care of those Amaranths and home. This is not looking good for our Terran. But it is looking good for Game 5. Wraith doing a little bit of heckling. Nothing that shoots up over here. I guess the sim is there. I don't think that's going to be of too much consequence. Sosij maxing his army out. He's got 2 scribes at the front line. I guess he's just going to start proxying units or whatever. Why not? Proxying structures. Ah, yes. Just warp the Matrix in right under his nose. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. 3 Architects coming out. The Architect count is up to 11 right now, which sounds like a... You know, that meme where they're like, you know, turn it up real loud, past 10, where 10 is the max. Goliath's trying to walk in here and pick off individual Architects. I think one of them will end up going down. More Heralds have been made. Unit goes down, so everything else speeds up, and that is definitely looking a little bit rough. This is not StarCraft 2. You don't have Warp Gate, so the pylon is out here in a funny way. He's just building them just to make it so that the Goliaths have screwed up AI a little bit, you know, unit target selection. GG. Kutyam concedes that match with the re-hits come in with those Architects, and now we are going to Game 5, and I am very excited about it. We go to Magnetron to decide the series. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Game 5 time, and it's on Magnetron. That's so cool to decide the series on Magnetron. It was, by the way, it was BDB maps the whole way through until the very end, and so don't say you never got your maps in here, BDB, because you did. It's pretty... you know, amusing to me. Frozen Sylphid, I believe, was him and Jujic working together. The only map that would have made this full BDB set is if Battle Spectre was the decider instead of Magnetron. But yeah, BDB's got Macroglia, Potadia, Frozen Sylphid, Knife's Edge. No, Knife's Edge is Jujic. Battle Spectre and Quasar Quartet. So 5 out of the 10 maps are BDB maps. In one way or another. I guess you could say that Frozen Sylphid's like half. So 4.5. Whatever you want to say. Whatever you want to say about that. Lattice opener for Sosij, he's doing that again. Seems like that is the way he wants to go. And it does look like he cut some worker for that too. So keep in mind, this is a 6 lattice starting on a 2-spot map. He knows where his opponent is and he wants to scout what he's doing. Because there has been a little bit of variation for Kutyam. He did something very different on Quasar Quartet, tried to do a little bit of a wall play. And yeah, the fact that Sosij has settled into the sim opener, and he's going to have it pretty early as well, means that he could maybe try for an overwhelm here. I don't believe it was 6 lattice in Game 4. I'm pretty sure it was only on Frozen Sylphid that he did that, but our last map, Quasar, definitely not a map where that was going on. And this Scribe's actually going to be pretty annoying and heckle the Mason. He's just trying to slow down the military production if he can. He should also maybe try to block where he was building it there if he was going super sweaty mode, but that's all right. He didn't have to. It was just saying. So this Fulcrum will finish up almost on schedule. Oh, well, yeah, he actually decollides and then swaps it out for another one. Now the Scribe needs to wait for its shields to recharge, so then it can wrap around and heckle the Mason, making the second one. By the way, during all this time, the Fulcrum is not producing a unit. It's not making a Vulture. What is he... Is he only going to make a Goliath? No, the Vulture starts production now as the Sim arrives. I would actually like the Scribe to hang by, hang up with the Sim and see what extra damage it can make. Vassal coming in. Watchdog is already coming because Kutyam recognizes what's happening here. You can slow that second Fulcrum. That's obviously very good. And indeed, it will be the case. Ends up losing that Mason. He'll lose another one much faster thanks to the Vassal, but the Vassal will be killed by the Watchdog. Sim coming out to kill the Scribe, or the Scout Worker, the one that was heckling the Scribe. Waiting for extra Vultures before he kills the Sim, which I guess is like a wise move in theory. I mean, you can just commit to the fight if you wanted to. But yeah, down will go that Sim. And there you have it. So Watchdog took care of the air threat. Vultures are out to try to deal with the Sims. They have to recall back to base. A gateway is only now starting. Did Sosij get enough of an advantage from that? Economically, he's up a worker. Militarily, he's actually in a pretty threatening position, threatened position. He only has, Sims. He made the one Vassal. He's not making combat units right now. I would love an idol right now. Try to help deal with those Vultures. if the vultures just walk in, they could kill all the sims and then walk into the scribe line as well. Because only, you know, the vassals aren't going to kill them fast enough. You think about the 120 health that they have, and the vassal deals 6 damage. So, yeah, 20 shots on the vassal. I didn't even need the calculator for that one. 10 shots for 2 vassals. This looks like it could be pretty costly here. Focus fire isn't quite there either, so one of those vultures stays alive a little bit longer than he had to. That lets Kutyam do everything he needs to just come in here and get some more harassment. Workers have to fall away. Oh, stun there doesn't quite catch a vassal or anything, so I guess they will eventually be cleaned up. But look at the worker casualties. It's like 5 dead scribes and 6 dead scribes actually. Make it 7. Is it going to be another one? Yes, make it 8. I can count. He's going to get one more. He does! The fadeaway 9th scribe kill. And all of a sudden, Sosij is in a much worse spot than he was before. And so that's why I was saying, did he get ahead from that opener? Well, he killed it. He got it to the point where he had 1 more worker than his opponent. That's not very significant as a... Let's just say it's not an advantage, right, really, in a significant manner. But then he's now down by 7, and that's much worse. So Sosij is not looking good. At the very least, a little bit of a silver lining for him now is that Kutyam is expanding. This is a long set. You know, we're on to 5 games. We've been casting for 50 minutes as of I look over. And so, you know, there's like time in between games. So we've definitely been sitting at our computers thinking and playing thinking about Cosmonarchy for over an hour now, right? And so I'm just saying that fatigue could be a factor here. I don't remember when they played either as far as time is concerned. So it could have been like late for Sosij or early for Kutyam or whatever. But bottom line is this is, you know, maybe Kutyam could make some mistakes in the macro of a 5th game. Maybe, you know, by extending play, by going for the ministry instead of just, you know, going a 1 base all-in move and just trying to finish him off, which is maybe a bit riskier, but brings the game to a head faster. It's something that will give him a little bit of a breath of relief. He knows that the army is still back at home. His Goliath reveal here from Kutyam might have also revealed the ministry when it attacked the vassals. So just, I guess I should confirm that because, yeah, it did deal 10 damage. So probably like 1 missile connected to that vassal. So I'm just pointing that out there. That could be a possibility. Sosij probably does know now that it's an expand build and not a pressure build. So, you know, the only problem here is that he wasn't able to defeat the Goliath menace in games 1 and 2, and that was with fairly even play as far as the economy is concerned. This is anything but even. He is still down by 7 workers, and the embassy's coming up. Unless he goes for like a 2nd embassy here, which maybe he would try to like do artisan play or something, but then you think about all the money you're spending just to get an economy back online. I think it's going to be too slow. You got to deal with the Goliath count, you got to deal with the phalanxes that are incoming afterwards. Kutyam has mostly stayed the course with his build order. Sosij is totally just flying by the seat of his pants about it. Ardent Authority, another lobotomy mine hit. Didn't give enough vision to scout the Ardent Authority, but yeah, pretty interesting. You know, you can't really click on it in that time. The vision updates pretty quickly in Cosmonarchy. It's very consistent. You can tell just by the way that units move around that they like lose vision as they're moving instead of it being something that hangs around for like a variable amount of time. And that's an important deliberate thing, making that a consistent time instead of like sometimes a scanner sweep will last for 40 seconds and sometimes, or you know, whatever it is. The range on it is pretty significant. So that's because vision updates in StarCraft 1 at a variable, like it updates based on the tick rate that has been occurred, like the amount of frames that have passed. And so every like so many frames it updates. And so you can get pretty unlucky with your vision updates there, and you can get pretty lucky with them as well. And just making that a consistent thing is important for making it so you actually have to scout the opponent, please. That would be wonderful. Cyclops in the anchor is an interesting choice. 2 Fulcrum coming up and still producing Goliaths for now steadily. I think he's got secured enough of an advantage. This would be a game where he could do what he did on Frozen Sylphid and just go for that, like, you know, okay, I'm only going to produce units out of 1 Fulk. Because he is very far ahead with that Vulture move. And I want to give Kutyam some credit. You know, he's looking favored to win the series now. If that happens, it will still be an upset. But the reason why it's an upset is because Kutyam's not really known for successfully pulling off aggressive moves. Not always known for having the wherewithal to think of the aggressive move to begin with. Or at the very least, it doesn't translate to the play that I've seen that I would immediately associate with him. And he has impressed me with the steadiness of this build order. The fact that he has drilled in an idea and he just sticks to it, you know, generally speaking. The treasury to the 3rd base is pretty neat. Definitely always nice when you get to showcase a unique strategy that is only possible because of Cosmonarchy's tech tree and stuff, that shows that somebody's actually learned to do something that just isn't possible to do in the same way in other versions of StarCraft and other RTS games. This is a Cosmonarchy strategy. This is not like a Brood War strategy adapted over to it or whatever. So pretty neat there. The Watchdog finishes just in time to dissuade that Envoy from moving forward, and it does reveal the drop. Kutyam definitely noticed that, so pretty good heads-up play there. Oh, the Goliaths are so close. Oh, the Goliaths are so close. Ooh, 13 points of health on that Envoy. We have seen some cataclysmic moments for Sosij where he's, dropped it. He doesn't even get the drop-off, doesn't get his units out, etc., etc. So definitely something to consider as the Grand Library is starting to make the necessary Amaranths. The Cantors are coming out of the Ardent Authority, and of course we have Zealots. So, a bit of a frontline focus. The Cantor is just kind of heckling stuff at the extremities of the army here. Not really going for the economy, not really getting a good scout. The Witness isn't even going deeper either, so ends up scooping it out. That's dead. And so too is the Cantor. Yeah, he pops a couple of Vultures. It wasn't the most cost efficient, I'll be honest, but he might have put him on notice for worrying about defense. Right now he's just got a Goliath and a Watchdog over here in the main base. Watchdog, of course, from the Vassal time. This Watchdog was actually really good, although the Goliaths were nearby, so maybe it was, in a weird kind of way, maybe if the Envoy committed to it and the Goliaths just walked down and killed the Envoy, he probably would have done even less heckling. But this is a very strong move out. It does not look like Sosij is going to have the army that he needs to deal with it. Even if he had that second Cantor, or third Cantor, I guess, with this army, I don't think it would quite be enough. But I do like him taking an advanced pose on the high ground, and he even has the Witness following the army's trajectory, so he can start to pivot down here if that's what he wants. He clears that lobotomy mine. That's going to be a pretty big signal to Kutyam that his opponent knows where he's at. The Witness spying. Finally oriented correctly. Love that. Of course, the wireframe needs to be changed now as well. I didn't even think about that. But definitely need to see it in action here. The army is sighted. Sosij allows the Goliaths to take some space, but they get in a good spot for the Cantors to start firing. He does have a third Cantor crawling its way over, the fourth one in production. No Envoy to try to ferry those units a little bit easier, notably. No remake on it. Vassals are going to try to speed this army up a little bit. But yeah, he's just trying to range down those Goliaths. If he can chip away enough of them before the Phalanx has reached the natural, we can see some better moves. Now he tries to split his army, see if he can't engage right on top of it. The Goliath count is still pretty absurd. 16 of them still standing right now. The Cantors are getting shellacked by those Phalanx. He tries to wrap around. Only 3 remain in the back. This could still be doable, but he doesn't have the front line that he just had moments ago. Definitely needs to invest in a little bit more. Kutyam making 6 Phalanx at a pop right now, knowing that his Goliaths have already served their purpose. How quick are the reinforcements going to come? A Vulture garrisons the Tensender for vision. Pretty neat, pretty nifty. And he does end up clearing another one of those robotic units. Sims are being made just to add fodder to the mix. I don't hate it. 3 Cantors still remain, but now with the Unitary Union starting, he knows that he needs those Architects out, or maybe even like a Unar push or something, but I think Architects would be the best choice for him. Problem is, the Phalanxes are getting closer. And the Witness is spotting on the army, but the Cantors are getting damaged. When those start to falter, yeah, look at all that splash damage there. That is not good for the odds of the Protoss. He might have 4 of these guys, but he can't get them close enough. That's what he needs the Architects for. Try to take a range fight a little bit easier. And again, no Envoy to try to drop. I understand that the Goliaths are here to deal with that, but if you engage with some ground units and then drop some more ground units, you can maybe take a more committed fight with the Cantors. It does feel pretty difficult. He ends up sending an Amaranth and a Zealot to their demise. It clears 1 Goliath. It feels like those are bad rallies. He does need to use the splash damage against the Terran Arsenal, especially with all these Phalanxes. This is actually a really big weakness of Kutyam's current position. This looks intimidating, but he's got pure tank right now, pure Phalanx. That's just not what he needs. Oh, jeez. Screw that pylon. I mean, if it works, it's because Sosij can't quite engage out of this choke. Oh, yeah, he loses almost everything, and that is the game. That is the series. There was a flicker of hope there for the Protoss to get a reverse sweep on the line, but Sosij does not do it. Kutyam will finish the job, and that, my friends, is an upset victory. That does mean Sosij has one more chance to qualify out of Gauntlet Stage A. Once you reach the qualifying matches, you actually have 3 tournament lives if you reached it through the upper bracket, a bonus life given to you. And that means that he will face the loser of Goliaths versus Grass Eater. That's a match that is a little bit more lopsided in terms of who's the favorite, who's not. Goliaths is the favorite in that ZVZ matchup. But Grass versus Sosij, if that ends up happening, is a pretty nifty little series. I feel like they've played a lot of games against each other, and they have a funny little stylistic matchup. So hopefully that even is what happens. I mean, if Jack loses, then that would be an upset too. If we get multiple upsets and then the winners, the supposed to be winners of those matches are facing off for last chance, that's going to be pretty hype as well. Thanks for joining us for another round of Cosmonarchy qualification matches. I know this one was on the longer side, over an hour, just barely, but thanks for joining me for it. If you made it all the way to the end, drop a comment saying so, and let me know which player you think is going to be making it out soon, or maybe some players that we're missing. I already know a few, but tell me what you're thinking about the roster in the comment section below. I'll see you guys tomorrow for another qualification match.